click on this over here. First of all, I'll kind of explain what that is later. Yeah, my name is Nick Klosky. I am co-founder of Honeypoint 3D, and this is the October 2016 monthly 3D printing and 3D design webinar. I'm super happy to have everybody here. We have more people registered this month than we've ever had in previous months, so that is super awesome, and I am really looking forward to answering your questions and going over some awesome things that I've been doing with Mesh Mixer and Fusion 360 in the past month. We also have some user requests that I will get to. Cynthia, I'm talking about you, but I also ask if anybody has any questions, please use any of the ways in this webinar thing of the chat or the questions or anything like that to ask me questions, because I really want to make sure that you are getting the best out of the training that we have on our website for Mesh Mixer and Fusion and Intro to 3D Printing. And I know that a lot of things pop up, and I really want this time to be dedicated to answering your questions about how to solve problems or how to do things and all of that. So with that said, and I see Jaime, maybe, checking in from Monterrey, Mexico. Awesome. We actually have quite a few overseas. I'm in the US, kind of users from other countries, and so I'm very happy to be talking to everybody wherever they come from. So with that said, I want to go and talk first to a question that Cynthia raised about using the hollowing tools in Mesh Mixer. And I'm talking to this first because we have the US presidential debates in 1 hour from now, and these webinars never go an hour long, so you guys will get to that, and I promise that I will be friendlier to myself than probably you'll see tonight. So let me first talk about the question that Cynthia brought up. And what I turned on earlier was a screen recording software. So what I'll be doing with this is the screen recordings that this webinar system creates are really kind of low quality for 80p. And I got some feedback that it would be better to have a and actually, let me kind of zoom in here. It would be better to have a webinar that is in kind of higher definition. So that's what I'm doing. I'm recording this separately so that I can post this on the Honeypoint 3D YouTube channel in high resolution. So that's kind of what you're seeing here, and you'll get a much better replay than you did before. So getting to Cynthia's question. So let me share my screen here and click on this like that and resize the video. Nope, like that. Okay, so the question from Cynthia, let me open up Mesh Mixer here, bring this in here, juggling a couple of windows. And let me bring this up here. So I guess Cynthia works with figurines, and she had a, there we go. She had a question about how to do hollowing. And since she is printing on a new resin printer, you know, the printing process is different. So these objects typically get brought out, you know, upside down. Essentially, they're pulled out of the build plate from the bottom. So the object, in this case, the figurine, would print out like this. Now, for hollowing, I'm not, and Cynthia, I would ask you to ask questions on the webcast if I'm not going over this, but I kind of did some hollowing on this, and it worked pretty well. Now, when you're doing any hollowing, I want to make sure that you start off with, what I start off with is hollowing works on absolute distances. If you want to hollow 2 millimeters in, you need to have an object that is okay for a 2 millimeter shell. And the way that you do that is you go to Analysis, to Units and Dimensions. So we see up here in the left-hand side that this object is 29 millimeters by 77 millimeters by 23 millimeters. So that is awesome. A lot of times people have hollowing problems because they think they want to hollow something by 2 millimeters, But something like this is set to like 2.9 millimeters, right? Some of the numbers might be off up here. You need to make sure that you are working with the right number of units and dimensions. So this model is totally fine. So we would go to Edit to Hollow. Mesh Mixer will think about it just for a sec based on whatever you kind of previously did. But right here it says offset distance of a 2 millimeter hollow. And you can turn all of these, but that looks like a pretty successful hollowing, right? So a little bit down the neck here looks all okay. And for hollowing, you'd probably want escape holes, right? To have either powder for SLS printing or for resin to come out. And if this were being printed up, essentially upside down like that, you would want to have the escape holes be somewhere, maybe not on the head. That might be a kind of a weird place. But you certainly can, right? So you say generate holes here. We'll just generate holes usually right on the bottom. That may or may not be good. You can click on the little red button inside of there to drag those holes around. I'm going to click remove. But if you want to generate your own holes, you can just double click like that. I can put one here and put one here, and that looks pretty good, and say accept. So what Mesh Mixer does is thinks about it for a second. It doesn't give you a whole lot of feedback, but my Mesh Mixer is now frozen up. But there we go. So we have two holes right here in the shoulder. You can kind of see inside. If we switch to the X-ray shader, which is this one right here, and drag it onto the scene, we can see that we have an inner shell with two little holes right here going inside. If we drag the normal shader on and maybe select it, I'll select down the head here. Just kind of do some painting around and delete it. We can see that we have an inner head, and going down, I can turn on allow back faces here and kind of paint on the head here. Delete that. Kind of looks not too nice. Let me make it a little bit nicer. But we can see that the inside of this is completely hollow. So that is kind of a little crash course on hollowing, but this model hollows just perfectly to allow for, resin to drain out or whatever. You could put the the holes on top of the head or whatever you want. Now, just as a very kind of alternative thing, if the holes, I'm just kind of undoing all of this until I get back. If the holes don't work for you, you really don't have to mess with them at all. You can kind of do it the old-fashioned way. So this is a hollow with absolutely no holes in it. And you can do things like click on Mesh Mix, an object on here. This is a cylinder. I can't entirely see where it's going, but I can kind of put that on there. I can transform it by scaling it up a bit. Like this, maybe move it inwards like that. And then the old way is to do a Boolean difference here. And I have created a hole into the inside using just a dropped cylinder. And I go over all of this in my class, but it's good to kind of just talk about all of the different ways of doing it. You don't have to rely on the hollowing tool at all. So let me not save that and go back to me. Awesome. Okay, so happy to show you. If you have any other workflow issues, Cynthia, I'd be happy to work with you. Just email me. And Graham, sorry that those, Safari support. So this is a webinar tool that is kind of new, and so I apologize. They may not support a lot of browsers and things like that. So I apologize. So that is something that I will bring up to them, and hopefully that they can fix that. So I apologize. So now I wanted to go over all of these things that I wanted to talk about. I've done some really cool things that unfortunately I'm under non-disclosure and I can't talk about, but they were really awesome scans that I used Mesh Mixer really thoroughly to actually scan an airplane, a prototype airplane. It was 50 different scans using, well, not this one, this is an Artec Spider, but I have an Artec Eva. 50 scans, it's about 16 gigabytes of raw data, kind of meshed all together into an 85 million polygon model. Even the Artec software had a problem with that. Even Mesh Mixer had a problem with that. So I wanted to show you one of the things that was really good, actually. Bring it up here. Wait for it. Oh, it's already up. So this is Autodesk Remake. So Remake allows for really, really complex models to be created with photographs, right? But it's not only just photographs. So what I did was I created a 3D model in Artec Studio from the scanners, and then I loaded it in to Remake just to essentially decimate it. Now, this is not the scan that I did, but this is just an example of just like a little Remake thing that I created with photographs of a little flower pot. But this program was able to load an 85 million polygon model. And then I went here to retopologize and decimate. And so this was actually, 85 million, and I turned it down to about 3 million. And it churned through it just absolutely great. So I want to really give a good shout out to Remake, because Mesh Mixer could not handle that big of a file. It was taking a long time. Even Artec Studio, the scanner software, to decimate the model essentially means to simplify the model. And it wasn't able to do it. It was just taking hours and hours to do it, and Remake did it in about 20 minutes. So this is kind of a great example of saying, Remake is cool, you might do some things with it, but if you look underneath, the underlying technology for how Remake works with meshes is based on the Mesh Mixer code. Now, Mesh Mixer is really great, and I did the rest of the work. It was about 30 hours of work on this plane model. But Mesh Mixer is a little bit of an older application, and so Remake is a newer application, so they kind of refreshed the code, and it was much more efficient at doing some things than Mesh Mixer was. I love Mesh Mixer, don't get me wrong, but this is just kind of an example of saying, hey, I wonder if maybe a newer piece of software might have done a little better, and it totally did. So Remake is awesome. Now let me kind of show you some cool tips and tricks that I found while working on this plane that really helped my workflow. And I'm sure I went over this in the training videos, but recording 18 hours worth of video is kind of a lot to remember what one says. So let me kind of show you what I was talking about with this. So let me go back to Remake. So this is a cute little flower I made, a scan of, took about 10 minutes or so. But this is not what I'm going to talk about. What I'm going to talk about is this awesome couch in the background that actually got some flower textures applied to it, which is a cool effect. These holes. So you see a lot of these holes in scans. They're where scan data isn't generated. And these can be a pain to work with, or not. So let me bring up Mesh Mixer again and import the flower. About 670,000 polygons. So here is the flower. Great, but what I really want to talk about are these holes. Now, holes are pretty easy to fix. If you, and I'll turn off the shader here just so that you can more easily see this. As I talk about in the class, if you just click on select, I'm going to make my brush smaller here, and double click right near that blue line, the hole is selected, and you can press F for filling it, right? And it fills it in pretty darn well. Now, if you have a really kind of jagged edge, like something, something like that, and you try to double click on this, sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. This actually did work, it filled it in, but sometimes if there's real jaggies and stuff there, or if I actually deselect a couple of those, no, actually that worked. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't work. Now, there are different ways of doing this. I want to hold on one sec. Hold on one second here, everybody. Well, can somebody let me know if they can still see the screen and still see and still hear me? It'd be awesome if somebody could put in the chat. I will also type. Can people still hear me? I just while people wait to respond, I just got a brand new computer. Okay. All right, let me... Okay. Let me see here. Just got a brand new computer, so... Try refreshing. If the webinar stops, advertise and please go to the replay when it is. Okay. So we'll see this, and if you're watching on the replay, then we'll hopefully this will work, but we'll see. All right, can you hear me now? Let's see, can you hear me now? Hopefully, can somebody say if they can hear me or not? All right, so hopefully somebody can let me know if you can hear me or not. Okay. All right, so I really apologize for this. I just got a new computer, and that is what is going on. So everybody has dropped off the webinar, but let me go in and kind of let you go. And I will notate that at 19 minutes, that's when it dropped off, and I'll let you guys know. So let me just talk about this. So here's the really cool way of doing this. So let me kind of go back through this. One of the really awesome ways of making sure that you close holes is by going into the Sculpt tool to Brushes, under Volume Brushes, for Robust Smooth. So robust smooth, let me make my brush a little bit bigger. And for this, we have refinement turned on, reduction turned on, smoothing turned on, all of that stuff. Now watch this awesomeness. If I click on this and I start to move, the hole is magically closing. And if I just go in, eventually that hole will just absolutely close. If I go to Analysis to Inspector, well, actually there's a little tiny hole there, but it's very easily repaired. I can go also to Sculpt, and just do this. Let me try to go into Inspector again. Yeah, so a little tiny hole is still there, but that's just easily fixed with the inspector. So you can go in and use the Robust Smooth tool to do this really awesome kind of hole fixing. Remember, the larger you make the tool, the more your mesh gets kind of loose like this, so you can kind of keep it a little bit small and move it in a little bit bigger like this, and make it smaller, and now it's a really good candidate for just going in maybe with the select tool like this, and then just deleting a little tiny bit and then doing a hole filler. So that's a really good thing. Now let me show you another really awesome way to use this, this tool. So you see that sometimes if you want to do some bridging between one side and another, let me actually make this even like worse, like that. Sometimes you get like a something like this, and you want to try to make a jagged part over here, talk to another. Well, that's not going to work. To make to another jagged part. There we go. A jagged part on this side to go to a jagged part on this side. Now the bridging tool will work pretty well with this, but here's another awesome use for the Robust Smooth tool. So the Robust Smooth tool can actually, let me kind of zoom in here, smooth out these lines. So if you see me clicking, that is now a beautiful edge that is pretty much where that other edge was. Now if you don't want it to really do that, you can turn off flow and then just click once, twice, and you see with each of these clicks, the edge where it is not changing all that much, but it is getting rid of all of the little jaggedness. And now if you wanted to do a bridge to the other side, it is going to be a lot more successful than it otherwise would have been. So the Robust Smooth tool is really, really good. So that's just another thing. You can use the Robust Smooth tool for closing holes, so we could use it there, and for also smoothing out difficult parts of your mesh. Right, so pretty cool. So now I want to show you the last thing, which is a really awesome thing, and this is at looks like minute 23. And here's the thing that I'm very excited about. So let me go in. So this is an example of something that I had to work on in that scan job that I talked about. If a scan came out like this, you are just missing this data. Now, you say that, okay, it's essentially a cylinder with kind of a plane coming up here, and it looks like a crease going around, but I need to recreate that, right? So if you go in and say, I want to just kind of connect this, maybe with this, and bridge it, it does a pretty good job, but you're going to have to do a lot of work recreating all of that arc that's there. So here is a way of doing it very, very easily. You could do it with Mesh Mixer, but if I wanted to be more exact, I'm going to use Fusion for this. So here, let me bring up Fusion. Good. So I have this mesh that I've brought in to Fusion. You can see that it's here. It's the same mesh as in Mesh Mixer. But here is a really, really awesome workflow that I used actually quite a bit. So I'm going to go here to Create Form, which is in the Sculpt workspace. Actually, that workspace, delete that for a sec. If you're in Model, you don't see Sculpt inside of here until you click on this little purple cube up here. And now you're in Sculpt. What I'm going to do is say Create a Face. right? Go down to create face, bring this over here, and I'm going to turn on snapping. And I can put it with an offset or no offset. I'm just going to say no offset. So what this means is that as I hover my mouse over, I'm going to try to recreate this plane right here, kind of the plane that this is on. So I'm going to go click, 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 click. Now I have created a face and it has snapped to that mesh. And that's all I need for this. So I'm going to click OK and finish form. So I am left with one little plane right here. I wonder if I can turn, let's see, just shaded with visual. There you go, that's easier. So we have just one plane here. So the reason that I did that is I want to construct a plane at angle, right? So this is kind of an undulating thing. I cannot create a normal construction plane off of it because it's not a flat plane. But what I can do is say plane at angle based on one of these edges. So I'm going to click on that edge and I'm going to create a plane that is, it looks like 0 is pretty good, right? I could create a plane at any angle I wanted, but 0 is a pretty good match. And click OK. So now we have a plane on here. I don't even need to have this body in anymore. I can just get rid of that. And we have our construction plane right here. I'm going to start a sketch on this construction plane. And it kind of oriented it a little weird. Let me turn it back. A little bit like this. There. So I'm going to create a sketch, and what I'm going to do is, I did a sketch, I'm going to do a 3-point arc. I'm going to click right here on one side of this. It doesn't look like an arc, but it is. It went across the cylinder. I'm going to click here, and then try to move the arc right where it is, and then click OK. Great. But now we go to Sketch Dimension. Can never find that. Sketch right there, Sketch Dimension. And I'm going to click on this arc, and Fusion is going to tell me that this is about a 25 millimeter radius, 24.9. I'm just going to say 25. So 25. So what I can do is I can say sketch an arc, but a tangent arc. And I'm going to start from here, and it's going to ask me what radius I want. I'm going to say 25 radius and press Tab to lock that in. And now I can create an arc all the way to the other side. But you also notice that that arc is not matching up to where the other side of that went. So if this were a constant radius, that would be great, but it's not. So what I'm going to also do is I'm going to go sketch a spline. I'm going to click right on my endpoint right here and just click once at the end right here, and then click this little check mark. So now I can use these spline handles like this to try to approximate what that arc was. I could use this spline handle, to try to approximate what that was. And I'm going to click Stop Sketch. So great. We have these two sketch profiles. One is a tangent arc. You might need that or you might not. And one is a spline. Now here's the real trick. We go into Model to Patch. We switch to the Patch environment. And let's select the spline. We select it by left-clicking on it. We right-click and go to Extrude. And you know, in the patch, you can extrude any sketch line. So I'm extruding this up. But I don't want to extrude it in necessarily the profile. I want to do it down at an angle. And as you see, as I turn this, I'm extruding it more at an angle. And I'm looking for an angle that pretty much intersects most of the back of that cylinder. I think, you know, somewhere right around there is pretty good. And you see it goes all the way there and fans out, and we click OK. Pretty nice. So now what we can do is, this is a body right here. click on this body. We can save this out as an STL. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to say fan. Now let's go back into Mesh Mixer and import and append that fan. And because it was modeled in the same location, it comes in the same location. So that is super awesome. I'm going to click on select, say allow back faces, and just click on something like this and say E for expand to connected. And I'm going to flip the normals, go edit to flip normals so that the normals are facing me. So now these two things are kind of inside of each other, and we can do some really cool things with this. So this fan, I'm going to turn on the magnet like this, and I'm going to make that the target, and then click back on the cylinder. I'm going to go into sculpt and probably to something like drag. But I want to go down to the filters here, and I want to brush on target, which means that I'm not brushing on this object. I'm brushing everywhere where my little magnet target is, which is this fan, and attract to target 100. Want to make sure that refinement is turned on, everything is turned on, and now watch this coolness. As I drag this over, I am, oops, kind of clicked in the back there. Kind of clicking in the back too, but that's actually okay. That's not too bad. I am going in and adding in geometry to recreate that fan based on, and you see these will never be connected, but I can connect those later with some sculpt tools and stuff like that. But I'm just essentially dragging on this back plane. And I'm only dragging on the target. If I try to drag outside the target, it's not going to work. So I'm just kind of moving these all the way over, maybe moving these there, and then I can kind of merge these together later. I don't really that much care about it right now. But I'm dragging these over as much, and let me rotate around and show you. Let me actually even turn off this fan, that I have created an awesome surface here. Now, if I go into select, I can obviously go in and maybe even do something like that. And like that. I'm close enough now that that I can do a bridge successfully. So let me just kind of delete all of this. So if I go to this and go to this and Control B, I can do a successful bridge, and that will keep that arc there. And now I can go in and turn on the fan and that target and do a little bit more painting. But this shows that you can create some very accurate CAD creations in Fusion and then bring them back in to use inside of Mesh Mixer if you have to stay here. Obviously, this is an organic object, and you would have to stay in Mesh Mixer to do it, but you can use this inside of Fusion to really good effect to help inside of Mesh Mixer. So I don't really have a camera anymore. Actually, I might. Let me see if I can bring myself up, just at least show the people on the replay me. And oh, I just took a picture of myself. That's better. So hopefully this shows you some cool techniques that we went into, and by next month, I apologize, I'll have my computer sorted out. This is a brand new computer I actually had to buy to work on that huge scan, and for some reason the USB hubs are resetting themselves, which is super annoying. So I apologize for that, but I hope that you had a good time. And again, our 3D printing book is #1 on Amazon, called Getting Started with 3D Printing. So I would encourage you to look at that. It has an apple, a mesh apple on the cover. I would invite you to look at that. And thank you so much. And I will see you next month in November. Bye-bye.